When a nuclear power plant shuts down for good, as in the case of San Onofre, it leaves behind the disturbing dilemma of what to do with the radioactive spent fuel left behind. Here with some insight into that issue are my guests, William and Rosemarie Alley, co-authors of Too Hot to Touch, The Problem of High-Level Nuclear Waste. Thank you both for joining me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Now, Bill, remind us again of why spent nuclear fuel is kept on site, and how long does it have to stay there usually?
Okay. Well, it's when spent nuclear fuel is removed from a nuclear power plant, it's extraordinarily hot and it's extraordinarily radioactive. So it's put into pools for at least 5 years while some of the radioactivity and the heat die down.
The cooling pools.
The cooling pools. That's what they're called, cooling pools. And then eventually they're to be moved to dry cask, and then the idea originally was that they would then be moved to a geologic repository.
Okay, so that sounds pretty logical, Rosemarie. How come you can't just store the fuel at the plant? What's the problem with that?
Well, certainly the time frame. Spent nuclear fuel is radioactive for around 1 million years. So this is not a long-term solution to store it at the plant. And again, pretty much all the nuclear power plants in the U.S. are near major cities or waterways. Another problem with the pools, however, is that many of the pools in the U.S. now hold 4 to 5 times the amount of waste they were designed to handle. Because of the backlog, because there is no repository to start moving this waste, once it gets to a cool enough stage that it could be moved to a repository. So we're seeing a huge backlog in the pools.
Let's talk about that, the storing at the other plants. There's other U.S. Nuclear plants that have been shut down, and they store their fuel there, and they're also that's the backlog you're talking about?
Well, all nuclear power plants store the spent fuel in the pools for the first 5 years. But what I'm saying is many of these pools hold 4 to 5 times the amount of waste they were designed to handle because of this backlog. Now, San Onofre has just joined, it's now the 11th decommission or shut down nuclear power plant that will have stranded fuel, where the power plant is gone.
But
and
the fuel
the
has
fuel
to remain
will
behind
sit there, yes.
For
yes.
at least the 5 years. And Bill, since this reactor has been offline in San Onofre since January, so 16 months, hasn't the fuel already started to cool off? Can we count that sort of in that time that we're supposed to?
That counts, but you're only a year and so into the million-year time frame that it's unsafe. And so it hasn't generated any new radioactivity because they haven't been operating the plant. But
is it dangerous to move the fuel? I mean, on the one hand, you don't want it sitting there on faults and on our coastline. On the other hand, what about the process of moving it in and of itself? Is that dangerous?
There is a danger to it, which is one of the reasons there's an argument about whether you move the waste to an interim storage site somewhere and then move it a second time to a repository, or you just move it once.
Rosemarie, what are our options for moving it? I know that Yucca Mountain at one point was thought to be a good idea, a place to move it. Do we have any options to move this fuel out of San Onofre?
Well, at this time, the nuclear waste program is in complete shambles in the U.S. The administration, Congress, the courts are all at loggerheads. And so right now the fallback position is the waste is staying in pools. Some of it is being moved to dry casks that have a 50-year design life. The dry casks are being promoted as a solution for 100 years, maybe 300 years, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is now saying. But we're talking about...
I want to delve into that. I don't mean to interrupt, but explain what a dry cask is and how that's supposed to contain that fuel.
Yeah, well, they kind of look like grain silos, okay? It's a very robust concrete container with a steel liner that the spent fuel assemblies are put in. It's cooled through natural air circulation, so it's not dependent upon electricity, which is one of the vulnerabilities of the pools. But again, it's not a long-term solution. Dry casks have an important role as part of a responsible nuclear waste program. but the open-ended time frame raises serious concerns.
What do you do next? Just
Yeah.
one step at a time. Bill, what are other countries doing with their radioactive nuclear waste? Can we take any hints from anybody else, or is everybody in the same boat?
Well, it varies. No country in the world has an operating geologic repository. Very few countries have their waste scattered amongst as many sites as we do. Two countries, Sweden and Finland, are fairly far along in terms of developing a repository. So they're actually building one, I believe, in Finland at this point in time. France is also making some progress. But a lot of countries are in the same boat as the U.S., pretty much back to square one, pretty much no indefinite storage at their existing sites.
In a word or two, a solution? Do we have a solution to this?
There's no easy solution. I think the abandonment of Yucca Mountain for purely political reasons was a major mistake. At the same time, putting all our eggs in one basket at Yucca Mountain and not developing alternative plans was another mistake. And there's a public education aspect to it, too.
Do you have a solution idea?
We just need to get this stuff underground and find the safest, most responsible site we can find, and then just recognize that there's no guarantee when you're looking into a million years. But we have to get it underground.
Have to get a next step. All right,
Yeah.
William and Rosemary Alley, thank you so much for joining us. I want to let folks know that they can get more information and comment on decommissioning the power plant at San Onofre by going to kpbs.org/San Onofre.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.